moment exceptional.
Are the recent offensive struggles we've seen from the old Red Leg something or nothing? We're going to discuss that on today's live Locked On Reds. Let's go.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr, and my co-host, Stephen Offenbaker. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have turned an addiction into information for you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us and talking some Reds. We encourage you, if you're listening, hit us up on Twitter or check us out in the YouTube comment section as we are live here on this Friday. Drop your questions, drop your comments, because talking Reds is what we do. And we want to talk Reds with you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. And if you listen every day, let us know that you're an everydayer down in the comments section. By the way, on today's podcast, the lineup has struggled over the last couple of days. Is it something we should be worried about? And there is a veteran pitcher who is now on the market for the Reds to go get. I'm going to tell you why I think they should. And we're going to take your questions and comments. And I would love to know if you think the Reds should go get Madison Bumgarner. Before we get into today's episode, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. That's Game Time. And Steve, where we want to start today is the lineup not as different as we thought.
You know, Jeff, there's extremes, right? And we saw this when the Reds opened up hot, everybody lost their mind. And there were people that were saying, you know, we talked about this off air, Jeff, they're going to win 80 games. They're going to win 90 games. They're going to score 100 runs a day. You know, that was never going to be the case. Right. And you and I, you know, we be as more optimistic than most, and you especially with your 75 win prediction, but baseball, you know, it ebbs and flows. It breathes. You get better. You have a rough patch. You go on a winning streak. You go on a losing streak. You're hot. You slump. And the Reds are just kind of in a blah patch right now. And that's to be expected in April. Listen, they have outperformed what I thought they could do in April because, as you know, and we've seen this year after year after year, playing baseball at Great American Ballpark in the month of April is difficult. It's hard to play in the cold, crappy, winter-ish weather that is April in Cincinnati. When things get warm, so does the team, at least offensively. So for them to have performed as well as they have so far tells me that summer is going to be a lot of fun. That's what I think of this lineup, Jeff. I think that this lineup is good. It's going to be entertaining. I've said it all along. They're fun to watch, and my opinion has not changed.
No, and I agree with you. I don't think that this is a trend. I think this is just a blip because, I mean, baseball's a big picture sport. Like you cannot, there's no such thing as instant reaction in baseball. If you're reacting instantly, you're overreacting. And really that goes for the entire season. But look at it this way. In the Reds' first 8 games, they were 4-4. And in their last 11 games, they're 3-8. They have maintained an average runs per game of 4.5 all the way through. I was looking at this. I was just like, okay, why were they 3-8? Are they scoring less? No. In fact, they're scoring just as many runs per game during their 3-8 stretch as they did during their 4-4 stretch. A little bit more of a pitching thing. We'll talk about that next week. But the only difference in the 8-game start versus the last 11 is the fact that they've hit 4 home runs in the last 11 games as opposed to 11 home runs in their first 8 games. So there's been a power shift a little bit, but I don't look at that and I say this is one reason to look at this lineup and be like, oh, look, they're not going to do what we thought they were going to do. I still think this lineup is going to keep the Reds competitive all season long.
I think so too, and we have to take some things into account. That they played several games without Spencer Steer.
Yes.
Some of these fill-ins or some of these temporary players, opened up absolutely on fire and have settled. They're not bad, but they've settled. And it's just an adjustment period. Listen, Jeff, I'm not worried at all. I think that the guys that you're going to want to count on are going to be guys that you can count on all season long. We can count on Tyler Stevenson, whether he's hitting for power right now or not. The power will come, people. I'm telling you. You can count on Jake Fraley. Jake Fraley is going to be very good over the course of the season. I think he showed us enough now. The sample size is big enough to know that the player that he became while he was away on that rehab assignment and the adjustments that he made, that was real.
Yeah.
That's the guy he really is, the one that came back. So you can count on him, even if you can only count on him against right-handed pitching, which remains to be seen. Can you count on TJ Friedl? I am starting to think so.
Yes.
Even if he doesn't get 3 hits every single day, one of them infield bunt singles, and make everybody that's old school so happy, he's still going to be somebody you can count on. Is Jonathan India going to continue to be the rookie of the year type Jonathan India? I think he is. Look at him. Just the eye test on Jonathan India tells you this is going to be a better year than last year.
Yeah.
And then we're still waiting for guys to arrive. So, if you're already throwing in the towel, listen, the Reds have more than doubled their win total from last April.
Right.
They're twice as good this year as they were last year. There is no reason for anybody to be, playing the gif of throw in the towel. We're not there yet.
No, it's far too early to be throwing in the towel, but also, I mean, you kind of said it, like there's reasons to be a little bit pessimistic right now. And if you're looking for those reasons, then you're probably not going to agree with most of what we say about the Reds. But yeah, Tyler Stevenson hasn't had the power. He has 17 hits this season. 14 of them are singles. The other 3 are only doubles. So people are looking for more from him. I think he's going to show it here soon. And then also Jake Fraley has had a little bit of a struggle over these last 10 games, but lest we forget, he is doing the one thing that we always say is a good indicator that he's still hitting well, he's still seeing the ball well, and that is he's limiting the strikeouts. In the last 10 games, he has 8 strikeouts and he has 6 walks. So, I mean, we're not talking about a guy that is just not seeing the ball well at all. And you mentioned Jonathan India. Jonathan India, for me, is just absolutely insane so far this season. I don't think we talk about him enough. I mean, he has absolutely settled in to that leadoff spot. We talked about him knowing his role. There's a difference between knowing his role and performing his role, and he's performing his role so fantastically. Leads this team in OPS plus with 135. He's getting on base almost 43% of the time. That is insane. And that's period. That's not over a 10-game stretch. That's not over a certain period. That's since the season began to now. He's almost getting on base 43% of the time, which, if you're like me and you want to be even more optimistic, means he's almost getting on base 50% of the time. But still, we're talking about an amazing performance from him, and the lineup's just going to follow suit behind him.
Well, it sets the table, right? That's what we talk about from that guy in the leadoff spot.
Yep.
Somebody that can get up there and set the table and get on base and provide RBI opportunities for those that come after. Jonathan India is embracing that role and he's delivering very well. As you mentioned, OPS plus 35% above league average right now. Now, is he gonna be 35% better the whole season? He could be. That's kind of what's exciting about him right now. Yeah. That could be who he is the entire year. This is one of those players that not like how Jason Vossler, as an example, opened up hot, was a world beater, but you could look at that and know, okay, that's not going to maintain for 162 games. That's just not how that's going to be. But with the way that Jonathan India is playing right now, it's a reasonable expectation to say that he'll finish the year somewhere between 125 and 135 in OPS plus. That's not that big of an ask for what he has shown us he's capable of.
I believe that. And then you add on the fact that, we talk about a guy who can set the table, but how do the Reds follow him up? They've got a 1-2 punch. And I believe in TJ Friedl. I think that this is what the Reds are going to have out of him all season long. He's hitting over 300. He's gotten 122 OPS plus. Probably not. I mean, he's probably more like a 110 OPS plus guy. But even still, I will take that out of TJ Friedl. But the thing that gets me, and if you're hitting behind Jonathan India, he's going to be on base. TJ Friedl, with runners on base, is hitting 379. And he has an on base of 47% of the time. If somebody's on base, TJ Friedl's getting on base behind that guy 47% of the time. That is an amazing 1-2 punch. And it's something that gets lost in the fact that they got shut out by the Rays twice, and they only scored 3 runs against the Pirates. And really, it was 3 runs against people not named Roansy Contreras because he was pitching like a man possessed yesterday. So I look at this and I say, if you're pessimistic about the lineup now, you're selectively looking at this lineup and you're not seeing the big picture.
No, because I mean, you just outlined it really well. Those top 2 guys are going to get on base, and now you bring in, immediately following them, Spencer Steer batting third. Follow him up with Tyler Stevenson, and you've got guys that can drive those runs in, whether it's home runs or gap shots. You know what I like about TJ Friedl, and Barry Larkin keeps hitting on it. I think just because it's a fun phrase to say during a broadcast or whatever. But that whole chaos comment,
yes,
when you watch TJ Friedl bat with runners on. It's really kind of true. Whenever they show the defense, it's kind of looks like chaos. The defenders don't quite know where to position themselves because they've got to hold these runners that both have the ability to steal. Mm-hmm. They've got to hold these runners and they've got to defend, they've got to defend against the bunt at the same time. So you can't cover and prevent India from stealing and defend the bunt. And even if you run the windmill, which we haven't seen in years, and it's great to see old school like baseball windmills back on the infield, but it really is kind of chaotic for these defenses to figure out exactly where to position themselves to take away that threat of a bunt.
No better example of chaos ball than the double steal yesterday that Austin Hedges just had no clue. Like he made the catch of the pitch and he looks up and he's like, oh, They were on first and second, and now they're on second and third. All right, well, I'll throw it back to the pitcher now. That was amazing to see. And if Spencer Steer hits that ball, like his hit, he got the barrel on the ball, and if he hits it just a little bit in either direction, that is a game-tying double. Maybe probably game-tying double, but game-tying double instead of a sac fly that gets the Reds within 1 run. So just a little bit of differences there, and the Reds could have maybe even won that game. I don't know, but the lineup is fine. They've just hit a rough patch, and that happens. I mean, it's a long season. It's baseball. That's going to happen. Steve, speaking of rough patches, there's a veteran pitcher who has found a rough patch in his career, and he is now available for the Reds to go get. Coming up, we're going to discuss if Madison Bumgarner is right for the Reds. Before we get into that, though, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors today, and that is Game Time. Game Time is the absolute perfect app to get yourself some last-second tickets. I always tell people, if you're looking for tickets to the game, get on Game Time right now. In fact, I use Game Time today. You'll notice I'm wearing it. It's playoff hockey time in Cincinnati. The Cyclones are playing the Fort Wayne Comets, and I got my tickets off of Game Time. You're going to find yourself the best last-minute deals anywhere on the Game Time app. You can go to Game Time and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off your first order. Plus, Game Time has the Game Time guarantee, which means you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less on a different app, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That is how confident they are. Plus, you can get sports tickets to the Reds, to the Bengals, to the Cyclones, to FC Cincinnati, to the Bearcats, whether you're talking about football or basketball. You can get theater tickets, comedy, all kinds of great stuff around town. Game Time has you covered. Plus, I once did this on a road trip to Pittsburgh when the Reds played the Pirates, got last-second tickets there at PNC Park. So snag yourself some tickets at Game Time today. Remember, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Tonight the Reds and the Pirates square off at 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Graham Ashcraft is pitching for just the second time in his career at PNC Ballpark And you can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Reds. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day. Everydayers, coming up on Monday, we're going to talk some trash with our friend Ethan Smith over at Locked On Pirates. I just, I hope that the Reds give us some trash to talk. I mean,
if they don't, I'm not doing that show. I'm sick that day. I cannot listen to Ethan beat me up for a whole half-hour show. I'm gonna have laryngitis that day.
We'll win the next 3 games. It'll be okay. But Steve, I've got a thought, and it's funny because I tweeted this out because I thought it'd be an interesting thought, and oh my gosh, the bipolar nature of the responses to this tweet just had me. I had to do a segment about this because Madison Bumgarner, I think, would be perfect for this starting rotation. Now, I'm not saying Derek Johnson's going to resurrect his career and he's going to be the Madison Bumgarner of old who was out there winning World Series MVPs. I'm not saying the Reds should move mountains to go get this guy, but I am saying that this move would save the bullpen, and I think there is some validity to his availability for the Reds because I don't think teams are knocking down his door for them to come pitch for him in their playoff chases.
So let's clarify where we're at with him. I know that he was designated. Has he been officially released? Is he out there already?
I think he's still on waivers. I think he's got like 1 more day.
Okay, so let me start there. As long as he costs anything as far as capital in the way of prospects, they cannot trade for him. 0% chance.
I don't think anyone will, to be honest.
0% chance.
Yeah.
Now, assuming that nobody does trade for him and they do in fact cut him and pay him his money and he goes about his way, he basically can sign a league minimum deal at that point because he just made $34 million. So we're talking about Mad Bum at league minimum with the Diamondbacks paying most of the bill. That's better than Connor Overton.
Yeah.
That's better than Luis Sessa.
Yeah.
It's better than the half-hearted chance that they gave Levi Stout.
He'll be back too, but yes. No, I agree.
Then I don't see the bad in this, Jeff.
And
what's the bad? What's the bad?
Okay, so the bad, and most people are probably saying this in the comment section, the bad is his personality is not really that great, right? Like, we know Madison Bumgarner, he's kind of a jerk. I think there's plenty of jerks.
Is that the word? Is that the word people use for him, Jeff?
Not a very nice person.
That's the word that you're going to use.
We're trying to
gotcha.
But when it comes to his personality off the field, people are like, oh, no, I don't want him anywhere near this clubhouse. You know who the Reds brought in a couple of years ago? Yeah, exactly. Bumgarner does not fit the vibe. He doesn't give off fun vibes like the rest of the team.
That from Zwinks there, Bumgarner doesn't fit the vibe. Yeah. I think there's the negative, right?
There's the negative. He doesn't fit the vibe. What you need to do if you're Nick Krall, you call him, you say, here's the deal. I know you're not getting that many offers. Playoff teams probably aren't coming a calling to seeing if you want to kill them, help them pitch. We need somebody to eat innings, period. We paid Mike Minor $10.5 million last year to do that. We can pay you $1.5 million to do that. You come, you pitch 6 innings every 5th day or every 6th day, because I have a thought about that too. Every time out there, you're going to throw 6 innings. If you give up 10 runs, whatever. If you give up 1 run, that's cool too. But you're going to pitch 6 innings. And this is how you save the bullpen, because the bullpen has just been overtaxed recently. They continue to be thrown out there, which, by the way, shout out to Luke Weaver on a much better, he fit my expectation. What'd I say? 6 innings, 4 runs. It's exactly what he did. Hate the fact that, they ended up losing because they just couldn't support that. But still, like, I look at this and I say, if Luke Weaver can do that, and if Madison Bumgarner can do that, then you call up a rookie, you set up a 6-man rotation, you get some guys going on this, and then you got 2 guys who can just take a beating every time they get out there.
Well, what do you say to this? The quirky picker Chad checks in a comment section and says, isn't putting Mad Bum on this team this year the equivalent of putting Mike Minor on the team last year?
For much cheaper for the Reds. I mean, obviously, Arizona's going to eat the money. And that's the whole thing in this.
So you don't particularly care about results. You just want somebody that can go out there and eat those innings versus somebody that can't and then blow up the bullpen.
Right. And let's look at this too, because I'm thinking of this in a comparison way. A couple of years ago, the Reds traded Devin Mesoraco, who we weren't getting anything out of, for Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey at the time was a mess. On the field, off the field, he was a mess in New York City. And when he came here, there were a lot of questions like, how's he going to fit? Is this going to work? Is this a waste of time? Did we just trade Devin Mesoraco and cash, because the Reds actually gave cash to the Mets in this trade, for nothing? Matt Harvey ended up pitching 24 games, averaged over 5 innings a start, and he had a 4.5 ERA.
I remember people being mad that Matt Harvey wasn't extended.
Yeah.
When he left Cincinnati. I remember that.
Right. Now, I'm not saying we're going to do that with Madison. Madison Bumgarner is not going to come here and endear himself. I mean, we've talked about it. His personality is not endearing. So I look at this and I say, we need someone who can save the bullpen. Madison Bumgarner can do that. Should there be a bidding war? Whatever. Reds, bow out. There's no reason to get into a bidding war about Madison Bumgarner. And if he's got other options, sure, he's probably going to take those other options. I don't think he's going to have a myriad of options here. I think he's looking at, all right, do I still want to pitch? Yes. Who's out there? Probably the Reds, Tigers, Royals, bad teams that aren't playing for the playoffs. So maybe the Reds could get him in this, and I think that would fit the bill of what we've been looking for since free agency. Give us a veteran pitcher who can go out there, and we're not going to hurt his feelings if we leave him out there to get beat up.
Well, one thing's for sure, you're right. Madison Bumgarner added to the pitching staff would definitely help save the bullpen. And if I hear you right, that's all you think he needs to do.
That's it.
All right, coming up, our viewers have questions and comments, Jeff. They've got thoughts, and we've probably got answers, maybe. Well, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But before we talk about that, let's talk about Ultimate Baseball GM. Ultimate Baseball GM is the coolest game around right now. I've always thought that I would be a great Major League Baseball general manager. And as it turns out, it's not that easy, not at all. If you've had the same thought and have fantasized about managing your own franchise, go and download Ultimate Baseball GM immediately. The game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of a franchise, playing through seasons and leading your franchise and fans to glory as you build a historic dynasty. In the simulation, you're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, managing team finances, scouting and drafting players, managing difficult personalities and injuries, navigating your franchise through free agency and all of the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and it's playable offline. You don't need an internet connection after you've downloaded it, so you can play on the go as you want and when you want. Locked On Red listeners are going to get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, or you can scan the QR code right there on the corner of your screen if you're watching us on YouTube. It's easy to look up in the app stores as well. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, we've told you before, the Reds and the Pirates play tonight at 6:35 p.m. Eastern time. Jonathan India will see if he can keep dominating Pirates pitching as he has a career .318 batting average against them. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Reds. Also, you can follow the podcast on all podcasting platforms, including right here on YouTube. Click subscribe, click notification. You won't miss a beat. Also, make sure you're following both Jeff and I on Twitter between shows. You can follow me at S. Offenbaker with 2 F's. You can follow Jeff at Jeff Carr with 3 F's because, as I've always told you, spelling is hard for him. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. All right, Jeff, this is the exciting time of the show. We are going to get into the question and comments, and let's do this a little old school, or at least off-season style. We'll do a little bit of segment 3 here for the audio folks, wrap that part up, and then keep on keeping on with the questions and comments, which will come out audio-wise as a bonus episode a little bit later in the day. And for the live viewers, we'll just keep on keeping going.
I'm in on that. And I actually have a question. I want to throw this up right now because it's somebody who I've seen talked about a lot on Twitter, and some interesting thoughts are out there about him. Matt McLain has been killing it in the minors so far. Shout out to Reineke. With Barrero struggling, it would be nice to see him get the call. I know that
So
you're in the
funny.
camp of this. You wanted to see him like on opening day.
I had this question pulled up as well. That was where I was going first. No, Matt McLain should come up today. And I listen, at this point, I really don't care who they send down to get him up here, but he needs to be up here. He can give you time at shortstop. He can give you time at second base, and he can give you time in center field. He can play all three of those positions. It looks to me like the best possible lineup kind of ends up with Spencer Steer moving to the outfield, Matt McLain eating some innings in the outfield and playing some second base, and Nick Senzel playing third base, which, good God, I didn't think we'd get there this season, but here we are. So for me, Matt McLain, there's nothing left for him to show us in the minors.
No.
Maybe if you're in the crowd of, well, he needs to be a little more consistent, and you really want to leave a guy down there for 3 more weeks to show you that what he's showing you right now is what he's going to show you. Did I say that right? Maybe so. Just bring him to Cincinnati and let's see how he does.
I'm imagining the Zach Galifianakis gif of like all the numbers going around and stuff. No. I'm with you. And it's something that he told you in his interview with you last season, where he was like, I kind of got ahead of myself. I was worried too much about power. Sounds a little bit familiar. Sounds a little bit like Jonathan India a little bit. And he's gotten back to what he used to do. He's just trying to have good at-bats, gritty at-bats, take the pitch where it gets, take the pitch as it comes. And I think the way that he is able to just kind of bounce back, because last year there were so many questions about the strikeout total and about his low batting average, because he's more of a batting average guy than a power guy anyway. And now he's bounced back very nicely. I'm with you. I would like to see him. And I'm starting to wonder, because I'm the one that keeps saying every time that Jose Barrero gets a hit, I'm just like, oh, there it is. He's going to figure it out. I just don't think he is. Like, I mean, Roansy Contreras bounced a slider on him the other day and he swung at it. Like, I think that we have seen what we're going to see from Jose Barrero. And I hate to say that, but I'm kind of there. I think I'm in the camp where I'm not going to get fooled by a double down the line or something like that by him. What does he do over the course of a nice stretch? And right now, over the course of 19 games, it ain't very good.
No, it's not. It's almost a tease at this point. Like, just every time we're ready to walk away, he's like, "But wait, don't go.
But wait,
And
there's
then-
more. There's not.
Yeah. So I think I'm with you. It's Matt McLain's time. He has nothing left to prove. It's time to bring him up. Jimmy McFarland checks in. Jimmy, how are you? He says, here's a thought. Let's flip TJ and India in the order. That way Spencer Steer sees more fastballs hitting in the 3-hole. Bring up McLain. The lineup needs a spark. All right. Well, I don't. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I like it where it is too. I mean, I hear you, Jimmy. Try to create as much opportunity as possible for Spencer Steer, but I like the way this works. And Matt McLain comes up, he's definitely going to be a 7, 8, 9 guy for the first, third of his time in Cincinnati, at least until he proves that he's still got it at the big league level, and giving him least amount of pressure adjustment period.
No, and I think that McLain would fit nicely into this lineup. The bottom of the lineup, I was watching them last night, and it's like they came up in the 9th inning. You had, Will Myers is hitting 6, so it's not like the bottom, but you had Will Myers, you had Nick Senzel. They were swinging for power. It's like, just get on base. Just get on and let the dudes who can do that, let the dudes who can swing for power do that. We don't have a lot of guys in this lineup. I just said 4 homers in the last 11 games. If we had guys with power, we would be seeing more than 4 home runs in 11 games. That's just not what the Reds do. The Reds got to play kind of like the Guardians played last year, where they don't hit a lot of home runs, but they score because they get them on, they get them over, and they get them in.
Malachi Hayes says, will it be hard to extend Jonathan India, even if he has an all-star year, because of his agent?
He doesn't have Scott Boras for an agent. That's the only reason I would say the agent would be a problem. So I think that it'll be easy to extend. I think that's why he needs to be the next guy. Like, we're seeing that he's figured it out. We're seeing that he knows who he is. Lock him into that. Say, all right, we love what you're doing. Keep doing that for the next 6, 7 years, and we'll be good to go. Because I think they could do a similar deal. Maybe it might be a little bit more expensive than what they gave to Hunter Green, just because Jonathan India has proved it a little bit more. But they could have like an incentives-laden thing, like make all-star games, finish high in MVP voting, things like that, and you could jump your base salary up, because that's what I was reading about Hunter Green. Like, if he wins a Cy Young, he jumps his base salary in his final 2 years of his contract by $2 million. If he finishes second in the Cy Young, he jumps it by $750K. If he makes an All-Star game, he jumps it by $200K. Like, things like that. Like, put those in the contract, and then when he's eaten, you're eaten too.
And those are obtainable escalators, by the way. He's going to make an all-star team. It may not be this year, but he's going to make an all-star team. Yeah. Will he get first or second place in Cy Young if he continues to develop? Absolutely, he could. Yeah, so those are obtainable. And I'm for the finding the silver linings, Jeff. Chad, the quirky picker, I like where he's thinking, because as bad as the Reds are, they're only one game behind the evil empire that is the St. Louis Cardinals.
Right. And I am in the camp that the Pirates are going to be better this year. I don't think that their current trajectory is what is sustainable for them, but it's nice that they're getting off to such a hot start. But I still think that the Pirates will be a little bit better than they were last season, but I still think that the Reds can match up well with them, especially with O'Neal Cruz out.
Let's jump to Jim's comment here. He says he's worried about Tyler Stevenson. Jim says Stevenson has taken very many fastballs right down the middle when it screams swing. He says, I thought for sure that with runners on third, he would be ready to hammer that first pitch. I think Tyler Stevenson's swing is still a work in progress, and I think that we've not seen the ceiling of Tyler Stevenson. I think he's still going to continue to develop and get better. As I keep telling you people, the power will come. The swing is still being tweaked. It's not large noticeable changes, but I've seen some differences in how he approaches pitchers at bat to at bat when you're just watching him. And I think some of that weighs into things like Jim's talking about with him missing, what we all would say is an obvious strike down the middle. I mean, hitting is hard. There's a reason they don't let Jeff and I on the field during the game. But I'm not worried about Stevenson yet. Are you worried at all about what you've seen so far?
I mean, the slugging is a bit concerning, the fact that he's only slugging 309, but I think that is an early season aberration. Just like, guys who are slugging off the charts right now, that's going to come down. There's a, the old saying of water always finds its level. That's what happens in baseball. The season is long enough that those kind of things can improve or, kind of fall apart a little bit if they're too high or too low. And I think that Tyler Stevenson's slugging percentage is going to increase dramatically. And by the end of the season, it's going to look about where we thought it would be.
All right, Jeff, let's do this. For the YouTube people, stay right here. We're going to continue with the questions and the comments. For the audio listeners, Jeff is going to wrap us up for this edition of the Locked On Reds podcast audio feed. And then watch your feeds, because coming out a little bit later as a bonus episode will be the Q&A that we're going to do on YouTube right now. Take us away, Jeffrey.
Thanks again for checking us out here on this episode of Locked On Reds. Make sure now you check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball, as they've got you covered and they can help you win your league with great analysis on ads, drops, starts, sits. That's Locked On Fantasy Baseball. It's just like Locked On Reds, free and available on all platforms, because we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And coming up Monday, make sure you check out our trash talk, hopefully, with Ethan Smith from Locked On Pirates, because we're going to be Locked On Reds every single day.
All right, let's continue the Q&A. Malachi, Matt McClain is better than Vossler. Over the course of 162, I might be better than Vossler, but Vossler is, look, Jason Vossler and taught me the most valuable lesson of the season, not to tweet in the middle of at bats. Jason Vossler is exactly what the Reds really needed him to be, and that was the guy filling in until A, Joey Votto comes back, or B, somebody else comes up here and takes over the show. I keep seeing everybody asking about CES, Jeff. Where are you? We didn't talk about this. Let's talk about CES for just a minute, because CES, he might get back up here to Cincinnati this year.
Shout out to Scott Campbell. He actually tweeted at you and me both the other day on Twitter and said, hot take, I think CES gets called up before Joey Votto comes back. And that is a hot take, because I know that, he's I think he's close to returning to AAA. I know Ellie De La Cruz returned the other day. So CES is close to returning, hopefully, for the Bats. I think we probably would see him at least a month or two in AAA. But if he continues to hit the way that he hit in spring training, we could see him up here in maybe like end of June, early July. Now, I don't necessarily know if it's going to take Joey that long to come back. That would be a bit disheartening for me, because I think if it takes him that long to come back, then we're talking about Joey might retire at the end of this season, because that feels like just almost too long for me. But I do agree. I think that the power that he showed could really play up in this lineup that, as we have talked about a couple of different times in this episode, they're just not showing a lot of power.
So here's where I'm at. I don't think there's any realistic expectation to see CES before the All-Star break. Not any reasonable expectation for that. After the All-Star, I still feel like it's probably a cup of coffee situation. I feel like September, get him a taste if he's performed well in the minor leagues. As far as Joey, and we didn't talk about Joey either, and we can talk about Joey for a second, because as you know, we talked about this, his whole return from the in rehab assignment, it was all a procedural move. He had to be back in Cincinnati for 5 days before he could go on another rehab assignment that it can last 20 days. He can go back to Louisville for 20 days. So my expectation is that 20 days from his return to Louisville, he's going to be on the Reds active roster. They're going to give him one more rehab stint. And if he comes along quicker, he could be quicker than that. But I think 20 days, I don't see that. What I'm saying is I don't see them doing this again. I don't see them returning him from the rehab to send him on a third rehab assignment. I don't see that happening.
I think if it were going to take longer than another rehab assignment, they just would have put him on the 60-day IL, and they didn't do that.
Absolutely. I agree with that. This is interesting. Corey asks, should Tyler Stevenson move to second in the batting order instead of cleanup since the power hasn't happened yet? I don't think so. One, I like the top three construction right now in India, Friedel, and Steer. But Stevenson, while he hasn't really shown us the home run power yet, he has shown us the gap double power and the ability to put the ball to the wall. So that's still going to drive. That's still going to score. Yeah, it's still going to score India. That's still going to score Friedel. That's still going to score Steer if he's on base. They're fast. I'm okay. I listen. Let's not tinker with 1 through 4, maybe even 1 through 5, because I think Will Myers is just this far away from breaking out. The weather's going to get about 5 degrees warmer in the next 2 weeks, and the ball's going to start jumping a little bit, and Will Myers' career is going to be resurrected at Great American Ballpark. That's what I think is going to happen. So 1 through 5, I think we're pretty set. The rest of that lineup, mess with it, screw around with it, move people around. I don't care. But I don't move Tyler Stevenson.
Yeah, those bottom 4 guys, whatever order you want to put them in. No, I like. And I'm all in, and it's a little bit circumstantial, so I know that it's not like concrete set in stone, but I'm all in on the India Friedel 1-2 punch. Red leader, Captain Chaos, let's go, print the t-shirts. But I love Spencer Steer batting third last night. I think that was his first time. I might be incorrect in saying that, but I think he should stay there for the foreseeable future. I think the Reds have tried out Jake Fraley, and Jake Fraley started off the season hot, and maybe he gets a look every now and then in that third spot, but I kind of like Jake Fraley maybe like 5th or 6th, and Will Myers 5th or 6th, and right behind Tyler Stevenson, because I think both of those guys could be good lineup protection for him. But I think that Spencer Steer in that third spot, you're looking at your top 3 hitters currently, but I don't necessarily know that that's going to change very much. I think Tyler Stevenson will creep back into that top 3 by the end of the season, but your top 4 hitters, statistically at the end of the year, could be in some order: India, Friedel, Steer, and Stevenson. Why not make those guys your top 3 or your top 4 hitters? And I don't think we should be messing too much with who goes 1-2.
All right, let's move. And so Jim M is in the comments over here, and this is interesting. This looks to me like this is a quote. All right, we'll do this. Jim, we'll put this up. This looks like a quote from an article. Jim, I'm going to take your words. This is an accurate quote from an article that you read that says the Reds took a risk on a guy who's yet to fully prove himself. They'll give him at least an extra season through 2028 when the Reds project they'll contend again. Hunter Green, right? Jim follows it with this question. Is he saying 2028 is when they plan to contend again? I will be totally ticked off if we fans have to wait 5 more freaking years to contend again. I don't think anybody's saying that 2028 is the magic number. I think everyone is saying that 2024, 2025 is the window to win the division.
That's when it's going to open.
Yeah. That's where we begin to be serious about winning the National League Central, right?
And then when you look at how the contract, and actually I still have the graphic up here, so I'm going to throw it up here. When you look at how this contract is broken down, he starts to become quote unquote expensive for the Reds in 2027. They designed this because they see the window beginning to open up in 2024. They designed this so that he is still cheap for the first 3 years of the window, as it were. And this is not a window that's going to open up for 2 years and then close itself all over again, because that is what Nick Krall has said. That's where the peaks and valleys quote that everybody just wanted to just absolutely go off on whenever he said it last year. That's where that comes from. So I think they see the window of contention opening in 2024, and they want to be able to supplement the roster accordingly for those first 3 years. And then maybe during that time they see success, they kind of see their budget creep up a little bit because of playoff TV deals and things like that, and ticket sales going up, following wins or more wins than losses. And I think overall, that's where this contract goes. The article or the quote or whoever said 2028, and it's seeming like that's when the contending window is going to open. If that's the case, Nick Krall is doing a terrible job. And I don't think that's where they're setting this up for.
No, look, thinking about what you just said and looking at that graphic and how that contract is structured, for me, 2024, look, Jeff is going to tell you that 2024 is a compete for a division championship because he's just wired that way. I'm going to tell you that 2024 is a wild card window. That's the first year they're going to be decent enough to probably be in a wild card spot conversation. Then when you get to 2025, it's time to start talking about winning the National League Central. 2025, 2026, 2027, several years of, playoff caliber baseball are in our future. No, 2028 is not when this is getting started. 2028 is when we're going to be right in the middle of all the fun, as far as I'm concerned.
2028, we're talking about Noelvi Marte, Edwin Arroyo, should they not be traded before then, being in the big leagues. So that if we're saying that we're waiting on Edwin Arroyo to get to the big leagues to contend, then you're talking about the end of the line, or not the end of the line, but almost the end of the line for Hunter Green's contract. Who knows who else will be extended at that time, if anyone else, which I think there will be. But I mean, you're talking about the end of the contracts of possibly Tyler Stevenson, of possibly Jonathan India, possibly Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft. That would be a very ridiculous period to be aiming for contention, because then you're talking about guys that would be key to that contention either not here or in contract years.
OJ's 1994. I love this. I love you guys in your handles in the YouTube comments, by the way. He says, if the Reds win 70, he'll be happy. It's an 8-game improvement from last year. You know who else will be happy if the Reds win 70 games? Look right here. This guy right here who took the over at 65 and a half games right here. You know who won't be happy? That guy over there or over there. I don't know where he is on your screen. He's over there on my screen. But that guy won't be happy because he's buying everybody a certain steak dinner at a certain
not everybody.
It's
one person. I'm not buying everybody. But no, I mean, I won't be that unhappy if they win 70 games. I think that 70 to 75 means we see a contract extension for David Bell, and we're seeing that's the step forward that we're all hoping that they take. And I think it's silly for anybody that is like mad at their performances right now. They just played a bunch of playoff teams. They're playing the Pirates right now, who, yes, that's a team they should beat, but they lost the first game of the series. There's 3 more left in this series. They've got the A's coming up at the end of this month, who are currently on pace to be like what the Reds were last year, and talking about 3-22. I think they're currently 3-15 right now. Like, they're terrible. So they should be able to take advantage of them. They should be able to take advantage of a couple of, I think the Rockies are on the slate next month. So we're looking at some winnable series, and then how do they compete in between then? This team can be in those series. So they are taking the step forward that we have all expected. It's just not going to be the step forward to 90 wins like some folks had delusionally accepted at opening day.
Jeffrey Amlung checks in and says the Reds need another solid major league slugger, somebody that hits 275 with 20 plus homers consistently. Myers is cold. Now, okay. Everybody needs that guy that you just described, Jeffrey. Everybody always needs that guy. Not you, Jeffrey, the other Jeffrey.
Oh, it just started raining here and it threw me off. I'm like, what is
okay. I thought you looked lost for a second.
I was like, whoa.
I thought, no, I'm not talking about you, Jeffrey. I'm talking about Jeffrey Amlung on the screen. Everybody needs this hitter. And everybody needs this hitter consistently. Myers is cold, but this is what I expected from Myers. I didn't expect him to be valuable until the weather heated up. I really, truly believe that once it gets warm, he's perfectly built for Great American Ballpark. I think he is going to be, he may not hit 275. But nobody really hits 250, 260, and 20 plus home runs. I think he can do that. If he's here all year, I think he can hit 20 plus home runs playing through the dog days at Great American Ballpark.
And Brandon Drury really spoiled us last year. Like, guys don't just hit 20 home runs in the first half. Like, what Brandon Drury did was not only surprising because he came here out of nowhere, but it's surprising because a lot of guys don't typically, like, you're in really rare air when you can hit 20 home runs in the first half of the season. And that's where Brandon Drury was. So I look at this and I think that, we could get a slugger out of Will Myers. We get a slugger out of Spencer Steer. We get a slugger out of a couple of guys who could be called up, like Elly De La Cruz or something like that. Like, Elly De La Cruz has power, and I know he doesn't look like a slugger because he's not, beefy, but dude can hit the ball a country mile. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Maybe Will Benson figures it out and comes back. I did see somebody in the comments section sarcastically asking if there's still room on the hype train for Will Benson. But yeah, I think that there's still guys that are talented.
Wait. The Will Benson hype train went from being a locomotive to you by yourself on one of those pump cars that just drives the thing down the track.
Still trying to push that thing.
That's the Will Benson hype train right now. Continue your thought.
No, I'm with you. It's the Will Benson hand cart right now. But there's still room to add a couple of cars on the end of that. But no, I think that this team will get its slugger within the organization this season. I don't necessarily know that they're going to go out and acquire one through a trade or something like that. Now, next season, we might see some movement where it comes to filling holes and things like that. But I still think the Reds have the possibility of doing that.
Jim says that the Reds need to end the 3-catcher experiment. And I say, absolutely not. Look, I know that Luke Maile is not
-1 OPS plus.
JT, I know he's not JT Realmuto. I get it. But the extra games of Tyler Stevenson are better than whatever the Reds are going to replace Luke Maile with. Let's just sit on it for a second, guys. Listen. The extra games that you get of Tyler Stevenson versus whoever else the Reds would be able to finagle into this lineup by getting rid of Luke Maile is not going to be as good as those extra games of Tyler Stevenson. There's no way. It's just not going to be.
I look at this and people will look at the individual performances of Kirk Casale and Luke Maile and say, why are we letting these guys play? It's because of Tyler Stevenson. Like, those guys can hit 9th in the lineup. They can hit 8th in the lineup, play good defense, and allow Tyler Stevenson to play at first base or DH this season. This is a this year problem. We talked about this before, and I've talked about this with Mo Egger, and I've talked about this with Lance McAllister. This is what they're doing this year because they look at this season, they say, we're not contending for a playoff spot. We want to keep one of our main guys healthy. Next year, they will kind of scale that back. They won't say, all right, we're going to carry 3 catchers and keep Tyler Stevenson healthy while we're also trying to contend for a playoff spot or something like that. That's not going to be the plan next year. This is a plan this year to make sure that he can see good health and not see all the bad luck that he was running into last year. So I don't see a problem with this at all. This is going to be an all-year thing so long as the 3 guys are healthy. And I think that it's a 2023 plan that gets reworked in 2024.
It's still within the realm of possibility that beginning next season, the Reds will only carry 2 catchers and neither of them will be Tyler Stevenson.
Yeah.
It's still within the realm of possibility that Tyler Stevenson will be the first baseman on this team or just be the designated hitter. So I like them getting him the extra at bats this year. I like them getting him time at first base to be more comfortable in that position, to give them options in the offseason.
Yep.
And again, the comparison is not Maile versus Casali versus Stevenson. The comparison is Casali and Maile versus whoever the last guy on the bench would be replacing either of those dudes. And Tyler Stevenson wins every time.
Yeah, easily.
I want to circle back to something that we were asked earlier about Jonathan India and his agent being a problem. And you mentioned Scott Boras. Now, did you say that Scott Boras is or is not Jonathan India's?
He is not. His agent
He
group
is in
listed
fact
as the Meister
he
group, I think.
is in fact signed with Scott Boras. I just looked this up based on Pemberton's comment here. Dave Pemberton says, "Do you guys think Scott Boras being India's agent is going to make him difficult to extend?" So this is the same question now with me verifying the Scott Boras information, Jeff, and that kind of changes my opinion. Will Scott Boras play ball with one of these creative extensions? Here's what I know. Scott Boras, while being an absolute terror to deal with all the way around, does have a good relationship with Nick Krall, does have a good relationship with the Reds front office, going all the way back to when Dick Williams was in there. The Reds were able to sign Boras clients multiple times.
Right.
So does it make it a little more difficult, Dave? Probably. Does it make it impossible? Probably not. I think that's as strong as a stand as I'm willing to take on that, Jeff. But I think it's still doable.
I think, especially this year, like if we're talking about he's got a whole year under his belt, maybe he makes the All-Star game this year, maybe he, plays to a 300 batting average all season long, might be a little bit tougher next year. But here's the one thing I know about Scott Boras. He really stretches for his players, and he tries to get his players the best deal, because when his players get the best deal, he gets the best deal. But that doesn't mean he's unreasonable. And I don't think that Jonathan India is in the group of players who right now could command whatever salary they want. I think he's like, maybe a year or two away from that, maybe 2 years away from that. So I think that now is the time to do what they did with Hunter Green. I think that they could get it done. It might not be as economical as what they got with Hunter Green, simply because Hunter Green still has a few skeletons in his attic right now when they're looking at performance-wise and things like that. Okay, I said that really weird. Still has some blemishes on his
reaction.
Yeah. Still has some blemishes on his record right now, as, he's not pristine when it comes to he gets $20 million a year. And Jonathan India is not quite there just yet, but he's probably a little bit ahead of where Hunter Green is. But overall, I don't think Scott Boras makes it impossible. I looked on Baseball Reference, and they had the Meister Group as his agent. That's why I said I didn't know it was Scott Boras. So,
well, you were close.
Yeah. Close.
Pat Magooch says, "Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Seems like a good day to call up Matt McLean." We talked about that, but I put that up there to put this up there. Pat continues on to say, and maybe even Andrew Abbott. I wanted to talk about this for a second because I really didn't get a chance to speak on the whole Levi Stout thing. I was out that day when you did the crossover. But here's this. Andrew Abbott should not be brought to Cincinnati and should not have his clock started before Levi Stout has at least 3 or 4 more starts at the big leagues. He didn't get a fair chance. He got called up to play one of the hottest teams and one of the best lineups in baseball right now.
On short notice.
And you have to remember that everybody's not great right out of the gate. I remind you all of Nick Lodolo's first start at Great American Ballpark to begin his Reds career. It was not great. It wasn't quite as bad as Levi Stout's start was, but it was still not great. Levi Stout needs to be given more opportunity.
We talk about the way that the Reds handle certain players and handle their opportunities and their appearances and things like this as kind of being telling to how they view that player themselves. Do you think, does this change the way that we view Levi Stout because of the way that they called him up, because there's been multiple times, and whether it's Jeff Brantley, whether it's Chris Welsh, whether it's Nick Krall himself saying this, that they want to be fair to the prospect, that they want to make sure that they're ready. They called him up last minute. Does calling him up last minute a la Todd Redman make you think, do they not see him as a rotation piece for the future?
No, I see it a little bit different. I think that they see him as the sixth starter in this rotation right now. I think all things being equal, I'm actually glad, because if they were doing what you said, it would have been Chase Anderson, because they could have just cut him and they don't care.
Yeah.
I really think they see Levi Stout as the sixth man right now. I think they see that he is outperforming Brandon Williamson right now. I think that they see that Andrew Abbott's not ready right now. So their hands were kind of forced with Hunter Green taking that liner and needing to create an extra day for Hunter to have some recovery time. So all of those things being said, no, I think they brought him up. He's the next man up. They needed the next man up right then. So that's why he was called up and started right then and then sent right back down. He's going to be back, but specifically about Andrew Abbott, Stout needs to be back and given an opportunity before we start another rookie's clock in the rotation.
Well, about Abbott as well. Abbott's on the same track. He's in Double-A. So if he were to be called up, it would be the Luis Castillo track. And there's a huge difference in Andrew Abbott and Luis Castillo, and that's stuff. Now, Andrew Abbott has nice command, and we like that. But, yeah, we want to be patient when it comes to Andrew Abbott, because I think he still needs time at Triple-A. He does not have the electric fastball and the amazing changeup, or, you don't have to have those specific pitches, but he doesn't have the electric fastball and the amazing out pitch that Luis Castillo already had at this point in his career when he was in Double-A. And that's why the Reds called him up. I think what he's showing is amazing, and he probably needs to be called up to Triple-A sooner than later and get that clock ticking and get him some experience under his belt there. But I don't think that the success that he's seen in Chattanooga right now means that we need to call him up tomorrow.
Oh, Jeff, you said the C word, Castillo. Oh my gosh. LG asks, is it too early to revisit the Luis Castillo deal to Seattle? Noelvi Marte is struggling in Chattanooga. Andrew Moore's on the 60-day IL, and Levi Stout meet the Tampa Bay Rays.
Is entirely too early to.
Way too early. Not even remotely close to being time to talking about this. Listen, we knew when we traded Luis Castillo, we were trading away an all-star. We knew we were trading away a stud, and we got a haul. And how that haul plays out, we're not going to know for years. But no, we're not going anywhere near to evaluating this trade right now, Jeff.
And that's why, and if you were frustrated by the Luis Castillo trade, I can understand that, because these kind of trades do take a lot of time to know if it was good for the Reds or not. And you're talking about all these guys need to be called up. We need to see how they play. Edwin Arroyo is not going to be up for a few years. And it's things like that I'm like, the Reds got pieces for their future. How do they play out? I did see today, I forget who posted, I think it was MLB.com, tweeted out pitcher power rankings and had Luis Castillo third in all of Major League Baseball. And I'm like, well, that's a little bit hard to stomach there. But all in all, they weren't going to re-sign him. And so they needed to turn him into amazing prospects and amazing future capital. And that's exactly what Nick Krall did. So currently the trade is good. It's going to take years for us to verify that.
OJ's 94 Bronco. We haven't really got into this, Jeff, and I've ignored it on purpose, but let's do it. If you want to save the bullpen, get a new manager. He goes to the bullpen in the fifth inning every game. All right, let's talk about this. Number one, who are you going to go? Not who are you going to go get? Who are the Reds realistically going to go get to replace David Bell? Two, what is it that you expect them to do that David Bell isn't doing right now? Now, in OJ's case, he's saying going to the bullpen in the fifth inning. Go back and look at every game that you're questioning when David Bell goes to the bullpen. Throw out whatever number of inning that is, scroll down to the bottom of the box score, and look at the pitch totals. It is not about innings pitched anymore. Pitchers are throwing the same amount of pitches in a game that they've always thrown. Starting pitchers are throwing 100 pitches. Major league hitters are more selective. There's a lot more breaking, nasty, all over the place breaking balls. Pitchers are throwing more pitches per at bat. starters are still throwing 100 pitches in almost every instance. Maybe not always, but almost every instance. It's not, I want to get rid. Jeff, how many times have I said this? I want to get rid of this whole innings pitched statistic. It doesn't tell us anything anymore. It is not a qualifier for a good start versus a bad start. It maybe you can use it if you're having a conversation about an efficient start versus a non-efficient start, but a guy that can get you 7 innings, 8 innings a start, that guy doesn't exist anymore. There's a few carryovers. There's a few dudes still around, Scherzer, that might get you that on occasion, but that's not the way baseball is played anymore. Major league starting pitchers get you 5. If you're lucky, they get you 6. On an exceptional day, on a day that is far outlier of their normal performance, they might get you 7. That's where we are in baseball.
And it's about data, which I know a lot of people hate that word when it comes to baseball, but there is just mountains of data, especially when it comes to young pitchers, about what happens to their future careers if you let them constantly throw 110, 120 pitches. That's why they try to keep them as close to 100 as possible, because if they're letting them go over to try and extend them for one more inning or try and extend them for one more at bat or something like that, and they end up throwing 120 pitches on the regular, they're going to get hurt. It is like a 1 + 1 = 2 equation in this information that we have about young pitchers. So we're seeing a lot more kid gloves handling guys like Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft, things like that. And Graham Ashcraft is such a different pitcher from the other two because he does not pitch to a strikeout. Lodolo and Green are very good at knowing how to locate their stuff in areas where hitters will whiff. And if hitters are being super selective, a la the Tampa Bay Rays, then they are going to struggle and they're going to have a lot more pitches per at bat than they would really like to see. So I look at this and I say, this is something that another reason why I want to see if the Reds can get Madison Bumgarner, because he is a guy that can throw 120 pitches every start out, and you're not worried about his future because his future is not very many more years left to go, and he is not going to be on this team when they're good again. So why worry about that? You're worried about the young guys, and that's why you're seeing them get pulled, and that's why you're seeing more bullpen games for the Cincinnati Reds, because this isn't a situation where David Bell is the reason for this. This is an organizational philosophy that comes down from Nick Krall, that goes through Derek Johnson and goes through David Bell. So if they get rid of David Bell, they're going to get another manager that jives with this organizational philosophy. It's not his fault. It's the entire team's philosophy for it. And it's not going to change anytime soon because this is a league-wide, this is something that the entire league understands.
Absolutely. And I think that's why Barry Larkin's not the manager of this team, because he does not fully embrace managing that way. No. I think if he did, he'd already have been the manager of this team. So I think you're right, Jeff. Listen, we've crossed the 1 hour mark. Let's do just a few more and we'll get out of here. But Poofy checks in. We haven't talked to our buddy Poofy in a while, and I love this. This is in response to the Ultimate Baseball GM. It says his girlfriend plays fantasy baseball. She picks the players who she thinks is hot and has fantasies about them. And I think that's funny because
honestly, he's probably worked just as much as what we do.
I know people that have done pick'em leagues in football and picked just whichever uniform, whatever uniform they like better, and they've won. I know people that I don't want to just say in women, but I know a woman that has had a similar strategy to Poofy describing here and won. So yeah, it happens, Poofy, and glad to see you back, my friend. You're always entertaining in the comments section. Jeff, let me grab a few more here.
Usually a good philosophy when you're filling out an NCAA tournament bracket too is just pick your favorite color.
Right.
Like if you claim to know anything about anything, usually you're not very good at fantasy or the tournament.
While I'm looking for the last two, Jeff, we glazed over Ellie De La Cruz earlier, and he's back and baseballing now. Mm-hmm. What do you think this does for his timeline? When spring started and he was healthy, I thought Memorial Day. I thought the end of May. That feels probably a little ambitious now. Is before the All-Star game a reasonable
idea,
or after?
it's something that I've talked with friend of the podcast Crazy about off air, like different messages and things like that. I wonder now when we'll see him, because there's an element of benefit for the Reds if they called him up early, and we're talking first 2 weeks of the season, which is already passed. If they call him up early and he finishes well in the Rookie of the Year race, which, I mean, don't want to get too ahead of myself, but they got a chance of that with Spencer Steer, because Spencer Steer could be the kind of guy that gets them some stuff there. But I wonder if he's not going to be almost a late season call-up at this point. I mean, he's super young. We're talking about a dude who's like 21 years old. So by the time he gets up here at the end of the season, it's not going to be that detrimental to him as a player. And I think that they are more focused on him as a player, especially when you got a guy like Matt McClain who could come up and be a good shortstop for this team, at least this year. And then you figure out what you're going to do with Elly De La Cruz after all of that gets figured out. So I almost wonder if the injury didn't push him back to a late season call-up, maybe August, maybe even September.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but that's probably, you're probably right. That's a bummer. I was really looking forward to him
for
Memorial Day.
Summer Elly,
Listen, Jeff, OJ's 94 Bronco has pushed my buttons. We're going back to this. He says, so why is it in the 70s and 80s, pitchers threw 130 pitches in 35 games and nobody got hurt? OJ, I think you're just messing with me. I think you know the answer to these things, but fine. Because everybody wasn't throwing 100 miles an hour with maximum effort. Everybody wasn't throwing with maximum rotation, with breaking balls that were dropping from, 6 feet in the air to bouncing off of the plate to diving into everybody's back foot. Pitchers are pitching differently. You know it. I know it. We all know it. You cannot compare the way guys pitch. Just look at the number. The sheer number of pitchers that throw the ball 100 miles an hour now versus the number of guys that threw the ball 100 miles an hour in 1973. It is dramatically different. That's why guys get hurt more.
And
nobody's pitching like Tom Browning anymore. We got to stop this.
And
Jeff,
I
help
think
me. Help.
This is going to draw the ire of some people, but the talent is better. Just happens in every sport. Ask any player, ask any former player, former coach, former whatever. The talent now in the game is better than the talent was back then. Across the board. I'm not saying like specifically the Reds or anything, because obviously the first person is going to comment Big Red Machine is obviously better than this team, but the talent across the board.
No, they're not.
There's so much. And look at it this way: like back then, there were defense first shortstops, defense first center fielders, defense first catchers. If you have those players on your team now, your team's not that good. Because there's no such thing as
there's a great conversation to be had now that if Davey Concepcion was a prospect today, would anybody take him? Would he play? Would he make the major leagues?
Right.
I don't think so.
Not a slugger. Because everybody, and that's the other thing, everybody's got power, which is, you go back to the Reds lineup right now and you look at that and you say, where's the power at? We need the power because everyone has power. Everyone hits home runs. Every position has a guy who can do that. Like O'Neal Cruz, Elly De La Cruz being like these tall, ridiculously athletic, can hit the ball a country mile, and they play shortstop, and people are like weirded out by that. Get ready, it's coming at every position. Every position is going to have somebody that can hit 40 bombs in like 10 years. That's just where the game has gone. There's so much speciality in training up like high school players and travel ball players and things like that people just invest so much time and so much money into, that by the time they make it to the major leagues, we're talking about the top 1% of people who play baseball now. It's not there's not going to be a whole lot of, boy, this guy had no talent whatsoever, but he just worked his butt off and he made it to the major leagues. This doesn't happen anymore.
And OJ, just to be fair, Jeff will tell you that I've been waiting to have this meltdown for weeks now. So this is not solely directed at you. He talks me back off the ledge every day before we record.
Bring the correct beverage for this.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But it's OJ's fault. Look, folks, this has been a blast. We're at the hour 8-minute mark. It's probably time to go ahead and wrap it up for the day. Make sure you have clicked both the subscribe and the notification bell down here on the bottom of the YouTube page so that you not only are subscribed to the show, but you get notified when we go live. We've been trying to do this sporadically. The Aloha Friday lives where we go every Friday will be coming back in the off season. So you're going to want to be notified when those are happening as well. We got lots coming for you. These Reds are, for the most part, a lot more entertaining than they were last year, and we're going to continue to tell you all about it. And with that, Jeff, that's probably where we should go ahead and wrap it up.
That's going to be how we wrap this up, Steve. Thanks, everybody, for joining in. Make sure you go check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. They'll give you the advice you need to help win your league because you need advice to help win fantasy baseball. That's Locked On Fantasy Baseball. It's just like Locked On Reds. It's free and available on all platforms because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure, everydayers, you join us on Monday as we hopefully get to talk a little bit of trash with Ethan Smith in a crossover with Locked On Pirates. But that's going to do it for us as we head into the weekend. The Reds are in Pittsburgh. Hopefully they'll win, 3 games in a row here, Steve. But what can people expect from you and me?
Well, they can expect me to continue to rant about pitching, apparently, but they can expect us to monitor the rumors, to follow the transactions, to be dialed in on what this team is doing, to gather all of that information and bring it back right here to keep everyone locked on Reds every single day. Better in the 70s. Good grief.